words. We have been friends for quite a long time. And I'm prejudiced, but I still think he's the best lay secretary that we've had. But I bring you greetings on behalf of the Ministry to Men organization in Oklahoma. I'm the regional coordinator. And because of that, I want to extend greetings to Brother Leo Pinkett, who is the General Secretary of the Ministry to the Men Department. Brother Pinkett and I have a lot of interaction, and so I'm glad to see he's on this Zoom meeting. I hope I meet his approval as I go through this presentation. What you see on the screen is the cover of Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised in brief. Now, if you have good eyesight, you can probably see that it's the second edition, which is an early edition. And and I apologize, it's just the book that I was able to put my hands on quickly. But when I do get a chance to teach this,
Do what?
I do like a lot of others. I can Google the latest edition, which now is about the 12th edition.
Somebody cut the grass to charge $80.
Charge what?
$80. Watch these kids.
I'm
Hey,
getting,
grass back there.
Yeah.
Deborah, can you mute everybody?
She get her money back from.
Give them. Mute everybody. Make sure everybody is muted.
Hmm?
Go ahead, Gerald. We don't want to mute you.
okay. In spite of what Brother Cliff said, I am not a certified parliamentary procedure expert. They do have such a thing. But I have been a lay teacher of parliamentary procedure for a number of years. And so today we're going to talk about, in the time we have, basic rules of order. We won't get into a lot of details beyond those rules today. But if you have an interest in that, then either pick up this book or the latest edition and educate yourselves on what would be beyond the basic rules. The next slide, Brother Eric. Parliamentary procedure, what is it? I would just ask in a general sense, a rhetorical question. How many times have you been in a meeting that didn't go well? Either there was too much confusion, too much noise, everybody trying to talk at once, not getting a whole lot accomplished. Well, parliamentary procedure is a procedure that allows things to get done in a meeting. It tells the group that they must work together to decide on the how and when to get it done. It provides that control. Robert's Rules of Order has been written to detail parliamentary procedure. For a small group of maybe 3, 4, 5 people, procedure may not be needed. You probably be able to work it out yourselves. But for larger groups, control is necessary. At least in my experience, things start to get a little bit loose and out of hand the more people you have. Next slide, please. Parliamentary procedure then is a set of rules for conduct at a meeting. It allows everyone to be heard and to make decisions without confusion. Next slide. It originated in our sister country of Great Britain, England. The Parliament, their governing body there, used parliamentary procedure first. Then when America was discovered and the settlers brought it here, then Henry Robert III published his first manual in 1876, detailing the rules of parliamentary procedure so that it would be or could be used as a basic handbook for most clubs, organizations, other groups here in America. Next slide. Why is it important? In a democracy, everybody counts. Everyone is equal in terms of discussion, making motions, voting on those motions or elections, occupying offices, etc. Parliamentary procedure is not so rigid that meetings are hindered from doing business. It can be flexible to the extent that the presiding officer can adjust to allow for business to be done. It protects everybody's right. And because of that, it's essential for everyone in the meeting to at least have an idea of what the basic rules of parliamentary procedure are. And if you are been blessed to be a presiding officer, then you should have a deeper understanding. You should read a little bit more and learn a little bit more about parliamentary procedure. And I would suggest for all leaders, all officers, all presiding officers, that occasionally it would be a good practice to have training on parliamentary procedure, especially in the early year, that everybody would at least have the basic understanding of what that is and they would know what's coming. Next slide. Why do you need rules? Well, we know about rules in our society and everywhere else. For meetings, it controls the meeting, gets things done, fair to all attendees, and it helps to determine the majority rule, which is important because the majority rule in a democratic meeting, the majority rule is the operative principle. Everybody gets a chance to speak, but when you're voting, the majority of one predominates. And we'll talk about that a little more. Next slide. Now this is what we'll spend a little time on, and that is what happens at a meeting. To keep order, one person is chosen to preside. That person enforces the rules and designates who is to speak at a given time. That person is usually called president. But during the meeting, oftentimes that person is referred to as the chair. That's the presiding officer. The secretary is elected to make a written record of what is done in the meeting. This record is referred to as minutes. Minutes should include the date, the opening time of the meeting, the reading of the last minutes, any unfinished business that may be attended to, any new business that's conducted, and whatever motions have been made and decided, whether they are accepted or defeated, a summary of reports, and the adjournment time. A typical order of business is shown on your screen. You have a call to order, minutes, officer committee reports, unfinished, new business, announcements, adjournment. And then we'll talk a little bit about motions and amendments and debates. The call to order. In parliamentary procedure, there is proper terminology that's required as well as conduct. So if the president is calling the meeting to order, then typically they can say, the meeting is now called to order. Now that's simple enough. Then the next thing would generally be, now we will hear the minutes from the secretary. Then the secretary will read those minutes. And at the conclusion of the minutes, the president would ask, are there any corrections to the minutes? Corrections are shown by members who raise their hand, gain the attention of the presiding officer, and then they make the corrections. Once the corrections are voiced, then the president can survey the membership to see if they agree that this would be a correction to the minutes. And if there is agreement, then the president can declare that the minutes have been accepted as corrected. If there have been no correcting statements made, the president can just simply declare the minutes are accepted. There does not have to be a motion to accept minutes. The committee reports. I know we have been in church meetings where, let's say in church board meetings, there may be reports from the stewardess board, the missionary society, ministry to men, youth department, children's department, etc. Officers or leaders who want to make those reports, of course, get the attention of the chair. They make the report. If it's just for information, then there is no action that to be taken by the chair. If there is an action to be done, like the stewards want to sponsor an activity for the boys of the church, then the steward chair makes that motion to do that. I move, and that's the correct terminology, I move that the steward sponsor a basketball tournament for the boys of the church on next Saturday. And then the chair needs to carry that motion, have debate or discussion, and then at the end of that discussion, then vote on whether to approve the motion or not. The president announces the results of the vote and then moves on to the next report. Unfinished business or new business. Unfinished business is what we used to call old business, but Robert's Rules of Order says that there is no such thing now as old business. It should have been something that was brought up in the last meeting that was not allowed to finish. And so now we want to finish that business. So we kind of handle that the same way as we do committee reports, except one important difference. Unfinished business, new business, nothing can be brought on the floor of a meeting except by motion. You can't just bring up, oh, we want to have that tournament next week and start discussing the whys and why nots. You got to make the motion first. You got to move the motion. And then, whether it's unfinished or new business, that allows the meeting to discuss and decide. So that's important to remember. Business starts with a motion. After that is determined, then you can't have the announcements, adjournment, or any other closing activities that's usually done in the meeting, and then declare the meeting adjourned. Adjournment does not require a motion either. It can be by motion, but it can be just by the chair saying, seeing that there is no more business to discuss, I declare this meeting to adjourn.
Yeah, that's right.
So, motions and amendments. A motion is a formal proposal.
They're right there in front of you.
Okay, we're getting interruptions now. A motion is a formal proposal to take an action. A main motion starts debate. I move that. Becomes the motion.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Not I make a motion, but I move that to do something. Most motions require seconds. A person can just simply sound out second, or they can get the attention and I second the motion. But either way is acceptable. And once that's done, discussion of the merits is commenced. And at the end of that, the president can ask if there's further discussion. Hearing none, let's vote on the motion. Then it's the responsibility of the president to repeat the motion in its entirety, exactly as it was made by the one who made the motion. And once that's done, then you ask for a vote to determine whether it's accepted or not. Debates are the discussion of those motions. And there are a lot of specialized debates that we are not going to talk about today. But generally, the debate is the discussion of the motion. And amendments can be made to motions by generally three ways. You can strike out a word, you can insert a word, or you can strike out and insert. So let's go back to that example of the Stewarts want to put on a basketball tournament next Saturday. Somebody might want to amend that motion to say they insert a word by adding and the cost shall not exceed $100. That's an addition to the motion. Then the chair hears that amendment, repeats it, and then has debate or discussion on just that amendment, whether you should add the $100 cost or not. And then you vote on that amendment, up or down. If it's voted up, then the chair repeats the motion, the amended motion now. We move to have a basketball tournament next Saturday, not to exceed $100. And that's the amended motion. And then you discuss the amended motion, and then you vote on that amended motion. You can delete a word. Same example. I move to have the Stewart sponsor a basketball tournament not to exceed $100, but not next Saturday. And that is a deletion of part of the amended motion. So then you debate that amendment, whether to not have it next Saturday. And then you vote on that, up or down. And then the last general way of amending is to strike out and to insert. So you can move to have a basketball tournament next Saturday, not to exceed $100, but let me back up. I moved to have a basketball tournament not to exceed $100, but we would do it 2 Saturdays from now. And now that's deleting and adding. So you debate that amendment, vote it up or down, and then the chair repeats the whole amendment, the amended motion as voted on, and then that ends, that particular motion with amendments. Now that may be a lot to digest, but that's the order of business for typical meetings. And the presiding officer has a large role to play, and the members themselves. So but it's good to know that one person speaks at a time. The chair has the responsibility of controlling who speaks, what motion is on the floor, what vote, and what the result of that vote is, etc. If you have any questions, hold that for the end of this session, and we can talk about that. Next slide. Voting and elections. Voting. Generally, you vote on motions. You can also vote on elections. Generally, there are 3 kinds of votes. And maybe I shouldn't say kinds, but 3 results of votes. One is a majority vote, which is the more common way. And that is if you're voting on a motion and it's not a special motion of any kind, so the majority rules. 1 plus 1/2 of those voting is a majority vote. If there are 100 people voting, not 100 people in the meeting, but 100 people actually voting, then 51 would be the majority. If 60 people vote out of that 100, then 31 would be the majority count. That would decide that motion. So majority vote is the most common, normal way. Some motions require 2/3 vote. If you want to suspend the rules of the organization, that requires a 2/3 vote. 2/3 vote means, as it says, if you got 100 people voting, then 2/3 of those 100 would be roughly 67 votes. 66, probably plus 1, would be the 2/3 majority, or 2/3 vote. And then the other one would be a majority of membership. Sometimes the bylaws may be that if you vote on certain things, then it requires a majority of the membership. So if in the church conference, you have 300 members in your church, and 300 members are eligible to attend the conference, and that special motion comes up, then the majority of the membership is required. And so what is the majority of 300? 150 plus 1. And so that would be a majority of membership. We've heard of unanimous consent. Unanimous consent is really not a vote, it's a determination. So if there's a motion on the floor that everybody in the meeting can tell that it should pass, because it's not a big requirement on anything or any person, then the chair can hear that motion, survey the membership in attendance, and know that this motion is good. And so the chair can declare that the motion passes, probably after a show of hands or standing, but the motion passes because of common consent. The majority of people are voting for it, and you don't have to be specific on your count.
What's my copy? They got the little African elder I was looking for.
Then we have elections, nominations and elections. Nominations are generally held because you are nominating for officers. So
Yeah, he needs a little more. Yeah.
So nominations for officers can be made from the floor. The chair calls for the nominations. We're going to open the floor for nominations for treasurer. So, are there any nominations? And then people can get the attention of the chair, make their nominations, and proceed from there. If there is only one name in nomination, the chair can ask, are there other nominations? If there are none, the chair can just declare that that person is now the treasurer, because there are no other nominations except one. If there are more than one nomination, then other voting techniques should be made. You get the list of nominees. You can the chair will call out the names of those nominations, and generally they start with the last. It doesn't have to be, but they can ask for, all in favor of person C to be treasurer. They can either stand up or raise the hand. They make a count on those, and then they go through the other two names if there are only three. And whoever wins the majority vote, the chair can then declare that they are the winner of that office. So you've been elected. President, vice president, secretary, treasurer, those are some of the basic officers in most organizations. You can have other officers as well. But you can do a standing vote. You can have a show of hands. Most elections, however, are done by ballot, written ballot. So once the nominations are made, then they distribute the ballots with those names, and then they can write in their selection or their vote. That generally requires a nomination committee who would prepare the ballots and would also collect the ballots, count, and then announce the winner. The nominating committee is appointed by the chair or by the membership, and then they can proceed to do their business. On a ballot, you can write in other names for that position that you want to. You don't have to stick with the names on the ballot. And the same thing with the voice nomination. You can have you can name or nominate other names besides the ones that have been named by the chair. Okay, so that's nominations and elections. Next slide. The bylaws and other rules. And we're just going to touch on this briefly, and this will be probably next to the last slide that we'll show. But there's a certain order of rules that we follow. And I don't need to ask members of the CME Church what law book prevails when we are dealing with rules of order for our church.
Our discipline.
Yes, the church discipline would be the main law book or body that we would look at to get our purpose, the names of our organizations that we should have, what they are to do, maybe the membership, and what's required of that organization. If your church has a organization, and I'm just talking about churches, doesn't have to be a church organization, but if your church has an organization that's incorporated by the state, then the let's say Oklahoma would have to provide the rules and regulations for organizations chartered within Oklahoma. And that would be the second ranked order. Some churches might have scholarship foundations or other foundations that they get incorporated under state law. And they must follow that state law as much as they follow the discipline. And then other organizations will draft bylaws or constitutions, and there are plenty of books and resources that tell you what bylaws consist of, what a constitution consists of, and how to draft them. Then you may have rules of order, and that's where you have Robert's Rules of Order that may come in. Most people will include that in the bylaws, that the church conference for our church will follow Robert's Rules of Order. That's listed in the bylaws, and so you are obligated to follow those. Then you may have standing rules that say, well, for a church conference, what auxiliaries, what membership is allowed in the conference, how much vote should they have, how often should the meetings occur. All of the rules that you may have that affects that particular organization or auxiliary or group, that's where you have standing rules. You know, whether we will do voice votes or we will only do standing votes, or we will have it counting votes. You know, whatever rules you have, that's what would be included there. Custom is just what usually happens at a meeting. For example, can any church member attend any auxiliary meeting that's being conducted? If any church member can attend, if that's the custom of the church, then that should be listed in the rules, standing rules. if training can be conducted in the meeting, if that's a custom that should be followed, then that should be listed. That gives meetings knowledge of what and how the meeting should be conducted and what extras should be attached. All members of the organization should have copies of the rules. Next slide. Questions and answers. Be light on me, but are there any questions?
Yes, I have a question. My name is Herbert King from Phillips Temple, Toledo.
All right.
I was told in a meeting that the only person allowed to take notes was the secretary. And I had not heard of that before, and I had heard they told me that that was part of Robert's Rules of Orders. However, I have not been able to find that, so I'm just wanting to know your opinion on that.
When you say the only person who can take notes, are you talking about the official notes of the meeting, or
No,
any?
just notes, period.
If there was the official notes of the meeting, then the secretary is the person, and the assistant secretary can do it in the secretary's absence. But the secretary is the person who's authorized to take or make official notes of that meeting.
Excuse me. I'm
Go ahead.
talking about just like if I'm in a meeting and I'm taking my own personal notes for myself, like maybe things that may need to be done, or things that were just for my own personal self.
In my review of Robert's Rules of Order and Parliamentary Procedure, if any member in the meeting just making notes for their
Right.
own benefit,
Right.
it's allowed.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other question?
Yes, I have a question. Brother Charles Hudson, lay leader.
Yes.
The question that someone always wants to ask, if an officer of the trustee board requests the minutes to be read because of a confusion of something to be done, is there a 72-hour law for that secretary to produce those minutes, or is it not? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Repeat that again.
If, just say for instance, the chair of a trustee board
Okay.
was not for sure, and there was a confusion on something to be done at the church that was done at a previous meeting. Now, if that chair of the trustee board requests the minutes to see what was said and what was done and what the motion was, is there a 72-hour law for that secretary to produce those minutes, or can they be produced at the time of request?
As I understand the question, if those minutes, if a minute book is present at the trustee meeting, and I guess whatever is being debated or confused is found in the minutes, as a part of the minutes, then the chair can declare that the secretary researched the minutes and find that item and advise the membership what it says. Does that answer your question?
Well, I think it does, and then too, I don't think it's really clear because there's a situation come up that a project to be done, but then at a later church conference, someone comes back up with another question to that motion. So before the work was to be done, the chair of the trustee board asked for proof of the motion and of the minutes of the last month church conference. My question was, can you get those minutes right away? Or is there a 72-hour law for that secretary to produce the minutes to that chair of the trustee board? I'm trying not to confuse you about this.
Brother Henderson,
Yes.
um, if I may, let me just say this. You know, we get into various things within our church conferences, and sometimes people make their own laws and their own rules. And Brother Henderson, if I'm wrong, tell me, but I haven't ever heard of a 72-hour rule for anything. And sometimes the best thing for us to do as laypersons, if and it would seem, Brother Henderson, that if that person is that whatever minutes they're asking for, if it's part of the church conference, it would be made available to the church conference. And the chair, the pastor, whoever is presiding, would seem to be the person that would make sure that that happens. But I haven't ever heard of a 72-minute rule in any meeting I've ever been in. And I've been in, and I started Parliamentary Procedure in the 4-H club up until now.
I,
I never heard of that.
I would agree in the sense that I'm not really familiar with a 72-hour or 72-minute rule. I have not seen that in this Robert's Rules of Order book that we follow.
Neither had I.
So I can't answer it any more than if there's something in a past minute that would be germane to what's on the flow of the meeting.
Okay.
The chair can request a secretary to research and to bring forth what it is.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Any others? Well, I would say then that if you have any more questions, then you might email me or email Brother Harris, and I'll get them, and we'll try to respond to you. But I think Brother Cliff has given me a definite time to be finished, and I'm a little bit over that, but and that's not the problem. But if you have any questions, or you think of any questions after this, just email me or him, and we'll get the answer to you as soon as we can.
Righty.
And my email is wg08ja@cox.net. NET. wg08ja@cox.net. I appreciate everybody's attention, and I hope that I have been clear in what we've been talking about. So I will turn you back to Brother Harry.
All righty. Thank you so much, Brother Henderson.